All right, welcome, friends, to the program. Yes, the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, is on Wednesday, March the 5th. So last night, I get into my office, my study, and I turn the TV on, start watching this speech, and it's immediately apparent that the Democrats who showed up were loaded for bear, and it was not going to go well. And it didn't for them. What an embarrassing spectacle. Okay, you can reach me at What's Right Sam on Twitter, now known as X, Sam at samandashlaw.com, by email. So my immediate kind of post speech reaction is very simple. You know, Trump's different now. This wasn't a divisive speech. This wasn't a radical speech. This wasn't an insulting speech. Okay, Trump had a brief, kind of funny aside where he referred to Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas. You know, I mean, but it wasn't. There weren't jabs. You know, it was. You know, he just was. I mean, compared to his earlier joint addresses and State of the Unions, I mean, this was tame. Trump is evolving into a statesman. And the left, the Democrats, they're still stuck in that, you know, Trump derangement syndrome gear where they are fighting against somebody who is, you know, lobbing grenades at them. And he didn't do that. You know, I was talking to a Democrat friend. He said, well, that's all a matter of perspective. And I said, well, wait. Like, look, there is a reason why so many people that, you know, for example, CBS poll, right? 76% of respondents to the CBS poll approved of Trump's speech. CNN was also very positive, net positive 69%, 44% very positive, 25% somewhat positive. Very negative, only 16%. By the way, 16%. Chapman University in 2014, 11 years ago, found that about 16% of Americans believe in Bigfoot. So, well, I'm just saying, 60. That's a CNN poll, folks. So, to my friends on the other side of the aisle, you have to think about this, and you can't just tell me that he's an orange Nazi, because it's not going to work. And if you go into dealing with Trump today in 2025 and still want to refer to him and think of him as a felon, think of him as somebody unworthy of any kind of, you know, real political engagement, someone who is, you know, a radical, a fascist, a Nazi, and everything else that you've thrown at him, I'm sorry, you are going to be the one to end up looking like you're way out there in you know, in left field. And this is what happened when you get what it's so bad that an African-American 13-year-old boy fighting terminal cancer didn't get an applause, didn't get any kind of acknowledgement except for an eye roll from Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, you know, from the Democrats. I'm sorry. There was one Democrat, Representative Laura Gillen from New York, who stood up to clap. One. And I can tell you at this point in the speech, if you missed it, of course, I'll play it here in a minute, go through some of these moments. But DJ Daniel is this boy fighting cancer, just a very sad story. He's had multiple surgeries, and he's always wanted to be a cop. And apparently there's, you know, a video circulating of him getting teased by some kids for wearing his, cop, police uniform. And so, Trump talked about him for a minute. He was talking about law enforcement. He honored DJ. And then, of course, sent up Sean Curran, who is his director of the Secret Service, and to deputize little DJ as a Secret Service agent. And this, you could tell, came as a complete surprise to the boy, who just went crazy. He was so happy and spontaneously threw his arms around the director of the Secret Service. He did. He just embraced him, gave him this giant hug. If you didn't have a tear form watching this, you aren't human, okay? And the fact that the Dems sat there on their hands, just, ignoring this, it is everything you need to know about the state of the Democratic Party today. I mean, Alexis Nungare, whose 12-year-old daughter, Jocelyn, was murdered, sexually assaulted, talks about this. Trump mentioned this in the speech, horrific crime. And Trump announces that in her honor, they're going to be signing an order to rename a national wildlife refuge in her name, in the name of the victim, this poor little girl. And again, Democrats, nothing. Zero. The widow of a fallen police officer, nada. I tell you, I mean, Trump's speech was phenomenal. It is the best State of the Union speech that he's ever given. I understand this was not a classic State of the Union speech because he's, just been elected president. So it's an address to joint sessions of Congress. But, frankly, as Trump is talking about all the things that he did, I'm listening to this and I'm going, well, this might as well be a State of the Union, given that Trump has accomplished more in 6 weeks than, Biden, thankfully, accomplished in 4 years. So this was just, all of it was absolutely phenomenal. But the most horrifying thing today, if you are a common sense Democrat, is to look at these public approval numbers that Trump has from this speech. And the reason that so many people approve of it is because it was a positive speech. Trump was not negative. He was optimistic, laid out a vision for this country, and people like it. And what we have to do now, moving forward, is really look at every political problem that comes along, including, by the way, this ridiculous ruling from the Supreme Court, which I will get into here in a moment. You got to look at every political problem that comes around through the lens that Trump is not some guy that got elected by fluke and represents a minority of Americans. Trump is leading a political movement that is a majority of the country, plain and simple. So, and by the way, the left doesn't believe that. The left thinks that they are right, but they are in such an echo chamber. They are so isolated from reality. They are all just huddled amongst themselves and repeat the same, conclusive, ridiculous things about Trump, that they are detached from what the rest of the country is thinking. So I'll put it a different way. The rest of the country is catching up to the way you and I think. And there are more of us than there are of them. And that is one of the clear, glaring takeaways from what happened last night. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, The What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. We'll continue in a moment.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam & Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The polling for Trump in a speech last night was so good that CNN had to write like a 7-page article this morning explaining how his numbers really weren't that exceptional. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Behind the What's Right microphone, at What's Right Sam, is my handle on X, formerly known as Twitter. Find me there for up-to-the-minute commentary. I do post on there from time to time each day. So, and I do enjoy interacting with many of you there. So if you don't have a Twitter account, if you don't have an X account, download it on your phone. Easy and free. Support Elon Musk and this program by signing up. Okay. Here's what, CNN, well, they, one of the metrics that CNN used is the changed few minds. I guess the speech, according to CNN, well, it was very positive, 69% positive, 76% approval from CBS viewers, but CNN then goes, well, it didn't really change very many minds. You think they said that about Biden? You think they sat around when Biden got up there right after he'd been, given an epinephrine shot, got him all razzed up, propped up on the podium there with Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi behind him, and you think they walk away and go, you know what? That was just, look at how many minds he changed. My goodness. So I'm just saying. Now, the part in the speech where a lot of Democrats, and I mean this, a lot of Democrats out there really think, Sam, he was a liar. Okay, well, tell me what he lied about. Well, the Social Security stuff. Look, I don't know yet. I don't know. I think we're missing the point here that I want to understand. Why is it that we have marked as alive people who are 200 years old? Like, I want to know how our system is so fundamentally broken, whether it's, purposefully, it's purposeful deceit or fraud or not. How is it that the system is so broken that allows this to happen? So I need to learn more, but are you disputing the fact that we have people marked alive in the Social Security system who, ought to be dead? So it's, by the way, Trump, I think what irritates them too is that Trump's funny about it. Right? So here's Trump talking about all the 160-year-olds in the system and how impressed he is with their longevity.
Over 130,000 people, according to the Social Security databases, are age over 160 years old. We have a healthier country than I thought, Bobby.
And he looks over at Kennedy, who, of course, is his health czar. This is funny. It's funny, okay? He got into the eggs. He blamed, and he just didn't explain it. He just said, and the eggs are the fault of Joe Biden. And the Democrats, they had their little paddles. They're so silly. And they said, no, boo, boo, boo. CNN tried to get at that with a group of Pennsylvania voters. Pennsylvania right now, very critical a group of voters that all the media outlets are interested in because, of course, Pennsylvania shifted to Trump and because Republican registrations are up in the state, primarily due to the efforts of Scott Pressler and his team. So, all right, so here's the CNN focus group goes, what about this egg thing? It's just ridiculous. Trump blaming, the Democrats blaming Biden for the eggs. That's his fault, isn't it? And here's what the Pennsylvania voters from the CNN focus group said about this. And you'll notice CNN was ready to shut it down as soon as this lady began talking.
They killed 100 million chickens in 2024.
That was part of the response to avian flu.
But exactly, but that also is a reason why the prices went up.
Right.
It's not that Trump did anything about that. And I mean, it was the bird flu. They had to call the chickens. Right. That's why the prices raised up. It wasn't Trump's fault. It wasn't because Biden had some crazy policy against, eggs and chickens. So,
I appreciate all of your perspectives. We're going to have to put a pin on that.
Oh, we've got to go. Sorry, lady, you're making way too much sense. Biden killed the chickens for whatever reason, right? Doesn't matter. That's why price of eggs went up. What are we talking about here? Oh, sorry, got to go. It's so funny. So funny and so predictable. Okay. So I don't look. I'm just pointing it out. Now, fireworks right from the very beginning. The moment where a congressman from Texas was stood up and started booing and shaking his cane at Trump, was told to sit down, and when he didn't, of course, this happened.
Continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum. The chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
And in comes the Sergeant-at-Arms. And hauls off Congressman Green out of the room, and it's all so performative and silly. This disruption. I'm not going to sit here and go, how dare they? I know who these people are. I'm not in the least bit surprised by it. Only thing that somewhat surprises me is if they really have such disrespect for Trump, why not just stay home? It's starting to make the Democrats that didn't show up look smart. And the worst part of it is that a black member of Congress, Mr. Green, gets escorted out of the building by the Sergeant-at-Arms, and his white colleagues stay behind. Now, why am I saying it in these racial terms? Well, I'm thinking in the minds of a Democrat, right? Where race is everything. I mean, you'd think with their perspectives on civil rights and equal protection that every Democrat in the room should have walked out with Al Green at that very moment, no? But they didn't. Because it wasn't about anything principled. It was about disrupting the speech. And one of the things that, you don't realize unless you're in the room is because Trump is speaking into the microphone, and at the point in time that the speech is being carried on television, the only mic that is on is the one that's right in front of Trump's face. Okay? And it doesn't pick up everything, is my point. People who were in the room, as it was said, it was extremely loud and noisy. And one of the things that's really incredible when you watch the speech is how much discipline Trump had in continuing everything and keep it going and doing it with a smile on his face. Like Al Green sitting there or standing there at this point, shouting like a lunatic and waving his little cane around. And Trump's just got this bemused look on his face. He's just looking at it like, all right, that's just, all right, okay, you done now? All right, good. He didn't engage with it. He didn't get into the mud with them. He had friendly jabs. He stayed on message. Right? Again, back to my original observation of all of this, and a lot of people aren't saying it's like it was a very unifying speech. And he didn't go off on any weird tangents. And folks, that's a success. So this is going to require a major rethink by Democrats if they're going to counter this in any effective way. Don't hold your breath, by the way. I don't think that's going to happen. All right, a few more moments from the speech when we come back, and of course the Supreme Court ruling as well. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky, that's me, your host of the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your injury case. Before I get to the speech here, and I do want to go through a few of my favorite moments of it, I have to just tell you that this whole Canadian tariff war bemuses me. And I think what particularly tickles my sense of humor is the fact that so many liberals have got their panties in a twist. For example, somebody actually is, who was this guy from the New York Times, I think, putting up pictures from earlier today of King Charles. Yes, that King Charles, Mr. Fat Fingers, brother of Prince Andrew. Yes. King Charles of Great Britain, wearing a Canadian uniform. Now, of course, he's, technically the head of Canada, which will be a little awkward when Canada becomes the 51st state. But regardless, he's got the uniform on. He's got the Order of Canada. Apparently, King Charles, in solidarity with his Canadian realm, dressed up in the full uniform. And the leftists in America are celebrating this, going, yeah, stick it to him. That's where we've gotten to. Trump has so wigged out liberals in this country that they've become monarchists. I mean, is anybody else find this funny? Or is it just me? And then I got people celebrating. I just was looking at it here. Pardon me, live radio, just pulling this up. Yeah, so the Canadian Premier of Alberta said no further purchases of U.S. alcohol will be permitted. They have state-run liquor stores in Canada. So, so they're not gonna sell any American booze. Now, I'm not a huge spirits drinker, more of a wine man myself. But I got to tell you, I look at my liquor cabinet and I have some nice bourbons and whiskeys in there. I do, and I enjoy them from time to time. I mean, I can't even imagine. What if I was just limited to drinking non-American, bourbon, non-American whiskey? Well, there's good Japanese stuff. Yes. Okay, but my point. Oh, wait. What does she say here? Hold on. You'll have to drink Alberta beer and spirits and liquors, was part of the statement. Well, I guess Canadian manufacturer. Look, my point is, like, if you go to the liquor store and there are 1,000 different whiskeys and bourbons and how much of it is Canadian? And of the Canadian stuff, how much of it is actually worth drinking? It's going to be sad. Now, behind the scenes, I have to tell you a little bit about this. Behind the scenes, of course, our Commerce Secretary is working feverishly with the Canadians to try to come up with a solution. So they're negotiating. So this is an ongoing thing. We will see what happens. But I'm telling you, in the meantime, a lot of silliness is occurring. Our friends on the left just beside themselves over this. Okay, so the speech. Phenomenal. If you're just joining us, I thought Trump did an incredible job yesterday at the State of the Union, not the State of the Union speech. I thought it was one of his better speeches that he's ever given. And he just looked like he was having fun. I think, Robbie, you're right. I think he was having fun winning, and he just seemed like a guy that was very comfortable with where he was at and came in and did do a victory lap. And the little, the little peons, the little, peanut gallery Democrats, that was just a silly distraction at the end of the day, right? So that was my sense of it. I thought it was just pathetic. But Trump had some really, really great moments. So obviously one of the first things that he said, and this was kind of addressed the Democrats, because the distractions began almost immediately. So Trump acknowledged it, saying he could really do nothing to make Democrats like anything he has to say. And this is how he said it.
This is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
And what Trump does here, what makes this so great, is he just neuters the opposition, right? He goes, look, what is he basically saying? He is saying that these people are so completely partisan and unreasonable that no matter what I do, it's not about the substance of what I do. It's just a matter of fighting me and anybody who has an R behind their name. I mean, look, Americans are paying attention, and I think people understood that. This is why support for Democrats is at an all-time low. Another dig came when Trump said that there was, it turns out, a fix for the border, and it wasn't getting a new bill passed, as the Democrats claimed.
And we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
The Democrats did not clap for that one either. This was good, right? I mean, but it wasn't nasty, right? There's early Trump, 2016 Trump had some hardness to him. This wasn't it. It was playful. And I thought it was, very, very good. So at any rate, so here, by the way, on that border issue, the Democrats are still trying to claim that they need legislation to clean up the border, right? This was on Saturday on NPR, Morning Edition, Steve Inskeep. And AOC was still trying to blame Trump for the border bill. I mean, it's just wild stuff.
To what extent is immigration as an issue part of your problem with working class voters?
I mean, I guess my question would be what does the word problem mean?
People voting for the other side and not for you.
Yeah.
Feeling that Democrats are not serious about the issue in ways that concern them.
I think that we have a problem on immigration because of the lack of progress that we've had on this issue. And As we know, Republicans weaponized that lack of progress. Of course, there was famously a bipartisan bill last year that the Republican majority in the Senate and also in the House were willing to pass. President Biden was willing to work with them on it. And Donald Trump said, do not solve this problem. As long as it is broken, then it will be politically beneficial for us. And so it is a problem not just for Democrats, it's a problem for the entire country that Republicans do not want to solve any sort of issue with immigration.
Yeah, well, see, this is the problem, right? This is why nobody takes Democrats seriously and why AOC is such a performative clown. We did not need the legislation because Trump has been able to virtually shut the border down in a month, okay? We have the military deployed to the border. We have border crossings at a historic low. We went from, 16,000 encounters at the border to sub 300. This is not real. All the Democrats have is demagoguery. And it's not enough. It doesn't get the job done, right? So then on the subject of Ukraine, Trump also was very direct. And people love this. I saw some polling on this subject too, and very positive response from the public watching at home.
I'm also working tirelessly to end the savage conflict in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians and Russians have been needlessly killed or wounded in this horrific and brutal conflict with no end in sight. The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes.
Pocahontas took it all in good stride and was clapping and smiling. Ha, 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 ha. By the way, Tim Walz today, enraged that Trump would call a member of Congress that he disagrees with a racial slur. I think Tim Walz is enraged because he is like Pocahontas, a phony, a faker, stolen valor, lies about his resume, lies about who he is, can't even admit that he was an assistant football coach in his high school. My God, that's exactly right. Tim Walz, exactly like Pocahontas. All smoke and mirrors. Okie dokie. Let's take a quick break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, back after this. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Okay, getting through the speech here. Lots and lots of great moments. By the way, Trump talks about the waste identified by Doge. And this is particularly relevant because, of course, overnight we got the terrible news that Amy Coney Barrett stabbed conservatives in the back with her decision here to vote with the liberals on the court. Obviously, Chief Justice Roberts joining that effort as well, and thus refusing to interfere in the TRO, temporary restraining order, put forward by the judge in D.C. that is now, I guess, decided that the U.S., the Trump administration, the federal treasury needs to pay out $2 billion to some folks. So I got to tell you exactly what you need to know about that. So it's in that context that what Trump said about Doge is very important. Here was a snippet about it. And you know what? Even some of the Democrats were laughing when he was listing these places that money was spent.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. $8 million for making mice transgender. This is real. $32 million for a left-wing propaganda operation in Moldova. $10 million for male circumcision in Mozambique. $20 million for the Arab Sesame Street in the Middle East. It's a program. $20 million for a program.
And then he goes on like a few more minutes. He just keeps listing stuff, and it's funny. And this used to be, kind of fringe humor that, libertarians would share amongst themselves, acolytes of, well, yes, Ron Paul, exactly, that kind of thing. So I'm just, my point is, this was all really, really well done, and it, it drove home the point. It drove home the point that there's this money flying out the window. So, and I'm going to get to the Supreme Court case and how that affects everything here in a moment. But I want to still get to, here's the moment that I think everybody loved. Little DJ, the 13-year-old with brain cancer. This just was such a heartwarming moment, and you really had to see it to feel it. But wow.
We're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
And so the little boy gets held up by his dad, and Sean Curran steps forward. The boy's just in shock. He's so happy. And he holds up his badge and his ID card, and he starts smiling. And then his dad's holding him, and he goes in for a hug, hugging this Secret Service director. Oh, unbelievable. And the Democrats just sat there looking miserable. That was telling. And by the way, it's not just the elected Democrats. It's the witches on TV too. Nicole Wallace on MSNBC moments after the speech had this to say about this incredibly heartwarming moment.
But I think this was a lesson in finding one thing that you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ, and I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives and the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
Wow. This moment was so bad that it was roundly criticized even by Democrats. But that's what the reactions were like in the aftermath of the speech, because they hadn't had a chance to recalibrate. They hadn't had a chance to realize that this speech was wildly successful. They haven't yet in 6 weeks realized that Donald Trump's presidency is measuring up to not just be immensely consequential, but popular as well. They are stuck in 2021 thinking that they can push a BS narrative and have it be defining for everyone it is used against. And the problem is that the left has run with these narratives, has created them, basically fictions out of whole cloth, created these things. And the fantasy world that then they find themselves in, they themselves are not able to see truth from fiction. So the truth here is obviously, we all know about January 6th, but the truth here is, of course, that this was an incredible moment that can't really be, you can't go and use words afterwards to undo it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Right back after this, folks. All right, here we go. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT, at What's Right Sam on Twitter. Sam at Sam and Ash Law is my email. So, look, practicing attorney here, as you guys know, I am always fascinated by these legal cases and want to comment on them. I'm going to give a very unlawyerly analysis first. I will tell you, by the way, if you don't know what happened overnight, well, the wee hours of the morning, the Supreme Court of the United States sided with the district court judge in D.C., this guy named Amir, who ordered Trump, the administration, to release approximately $2 billion in payments in monies that was owed on existing contracts that DOJ identified as wasteful. And, all this needed was a 5-4 vote. 5-4 saying Trump could withhold the money, that the TRO was, the restraining order preventing him from doing so, was unlawful. We didn't get that because, of course, the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett, who is Trump put her on the bench, right? More on her in a minute. Voted with the liberals on the court, so it went 5-4 the other way. And, well, there is a scathing dissent from Alito, Justice Thomas, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Kavanaugh joined that dissent. I'm going to quote here. I've got the whole thing printed up here. I got the decision. I've been obviously going through it all morning. By the way, the order to vacate the hold on the TRO is just a page. It's nothing, and it's an unsigned order, right? Now, nobody has an opinion on it. The only thing that is signed is the dissent, and normally temporary restraining orders can't be appealed. They're put in place, and you wait to argue the case on its merits, generally speaking. So here the court took it because, of course, there's exceptional issues at play, and it's not $200,000, it's $2 billion, okay? Justice Alito writes this. Does a single district court judge who likely lacks jurisdiction have the unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out, and probably lose forever, $2 billion taxpayer dollars? The answer to that question should be an emphatic no, but a majority of this court apparently thinks otherwise. I am stunned. Now, eagle-eyed observers noticed that Amy Coney Barrett last night at the State of the Union speech, joint speech to Congress. After the speech, Trump goes down, meets with the justices, and she gave him some side-eye. Gave him a little scowl. And people said, boy, she really doesn't like him. I think she knew she'd stabbed him in the back. Now, let me tell you what happens here. By the way, the issue, some of the issues are going to be heard on their merits on the 6th, which is tomorrow. So there's another big hearing on this tomorrow back in district court. So this it's not done. But really, Trump has, I think, a couple of things he can do, right? His decision is he either releases the money, as the judge is ordering him to do, or not. Now, remember, when it came to the student loan forgiveness, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that Biden couldn't do it, and so Biden just broke it up and didn't do it anyway and ignored the Supreme Court. Trump could do the same thing. And that's one option. I mentioned this on Twitter this morning. I think the other option is, because these are fulfilled contracts. A lot of people are saying, well, Sam, these are fulfilled contracts, right? This is like these are contracts that supposedly already had performance. Like they already trained the shrimp that they put on the treadmill and taught them how to jog. That is actually literally like one of the payments. They already taught the shrimp how to jog, Sam, on the treadmill. So like, why wouldn't they get paid for that? Like, obviously they performed under the contract. You can't not pay them. And my answer to this is where I'm going to get into some non-lawyer, advice or ideas or thinking. How does the Supreme Court enforce its rulings? I mean, that's a very serious question. How does the Supreme Court enforce anything? The Supreme Court makes decisions and rulings. Then the Supreme Court must rely on the executive branch for enforcement. The Supreme Court doesn't have an army. The Supreme Court doesn't have a police force. The Supreme Court doesn't have much of anything except for a handful of marshals that are there to protect the members of the court and the buildings and whatnot. But they're wholly dependent on the executive branch of government, the president, through the Justice Department, the FBI, to enforce whatever edicts it puts out there. Does that make sense? You know, the Supreme Court has been obsessed. John Roberts is a very political judge. And as Chief Justice, one of the things that he is constantly, and he'll say these, when he gives speeches at law schools and things, he talks about this. So I'm not making this up. This is a thing. And a lot of lawyers know about this. John Roberts is very concerned about the legitimacy of the court. He believes that he has to make decisions weighing political consequences of them in order to not get the public pissed off at the court. And here's the mistake. The justices of the Supreme Court who have this thinking erroneously believe that it is the left that they need to be worried about. Now, one thing I've noticed, and I think it's true with Amy Coney Barrett, is that she got on the bench, and I'm not saying that she didn't lie or pretend to be something different, before her confirmation when she was being considered for the position. But I definitely think that when threats came at the court, when Kavanaugh had, the guy arrested basically on his doorstep with a gun and zip ties, Amy Coney Barrett flipped out. And, some people said that she even thought about quitting the court. So she definitely fears, left-wing violence. And the Biden administration allowed the left-wing violence to run unchecked because they wanted to intimidate the court. That's a huge part of the story that we can't ignore. But when we talk about the court, particularly the Chief Justice, John Roberts, and his, political considerations, they're so worried about the sensibilities of the left being, that the left isn't going to take the court seriously. And what's happening right now, actually, the blind spot for these justices is the right. And not a political violence. Like, that's not who we are. I mean, we're not going to go and start assassinating justices. That's not it. We're just going to stop taking the word of the law too literally. The court had one thing going for it. It's that Americans go, okay, the Supreme Court decided, and that's the law. But then the Supreme Court starts making up laws. And it started with Roe v. Wade, for example. Major erosion of trust in the Supreme Court. There have been historic cases as well that I could argue were absolutely ridiculous, like Korematsu. But now we're getting into this where the court is so interested in seeing themselves as now the opponents of Trump, but they haven't realized that the mood of the country has shifted. Trump won 7 out of 7 swing states. He won 88% of the counties. He won the popular vote. These are things that are over the heads of people that live in D.C. and are plugged in to the D.C. insider way of thinking. They're inside the bubble. So I think if Trump ignores it, well, then what? What happens? He gets impeached a third time? Please, you think he gives a rip? Now, there's one more thing that can happen, and this is what I mentioned on Twitter this morning. I want to get to it because it's a more interesting approach. See, if Elon Musk, Doge, they're always talking about how it's fraud, it's waste bordering on fraud. What happens if later today, tomorrow, the Attorney General, opens an investigation into every single one of these entities, a criminal investigation, who have received these payments for BS work? Let's talk about that when I come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, welcome back. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Yes, greetings, friends. By the way, what is up with the weather today? Here in Las Vegas, there's something weird going on. Appears to be rain. I don't know. I literally have my car is like perfectly washed. It's never the right day for rain. We need it, right? We need the water. But it's the frustrating thing. It's like because it doesn't rain here very often, folks. If you're not from Vegas and not based here, you know this. It's a dry place. So, in theory, we always want rain, right? We want the water, but then it's always coming at an inconvenient time, like when you're going to do something outside or just right after you've washed your car. Okay. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter, sam@samandashlaw.com is my email. So this Supreme Court decision, the vacated order to stop the temporary restraining order, in other words, allowing the district court judge in D.C. to force the Trump administration to pay out about $2 billion of wasteful spending is crazy. Now, there's going to be a hearing tomorrow, it looks like, on the merits of the case. So it's gonna there's some further progress still required, and that then can be reviewed again by the Supreme Court, which would only require 4 justices to take the matter up a second time on the merits. And by the way, if we have 4 justices, I mean, if there were 4 in the dissent here, so presumably those 4 would demand that this be heard again. So I mentioned, the solutions here for Trump, what the Trump administration can do. They can follow the order, they can ignore the order. I explained that there's not much that can happen to them if they ignore it, because they control the Treasury, right? This is why Trump, initially, right, in the first couple of weeks, seized control of the payment system in the Treasury. If you control the payments, if you can turn it on and off, then you've got all the power. If it's some deep state, blue-haired nose ring chick that operates the payments in the Treasury, well, then the Supreme Court decision comes out, well, okay, we're going to do this. Yep, yeah, there you go. But money gone. But the next thing that can happen is the Department of Justice ought to open an investigation into all of this. Because I think some of these grants, when you look at them, are absurd. And very, very well may be fraudulent. Like, take, for example, and Stacey Abrams, she got called out last night. Stacey Abrams and her newly formed NGO that went from having about $100 in its business checking account to getting a $2 billion grant. For what? And at what point, and this is going to be interesting, because to get these grants, you have to submit paperwork, you have to get it, all this stuff. I guarantee you that a deep dive investigation into this is going to find a problem. Multiple problems. Because these people have been so accustomed to doing things in a sloppy way that they've gotten lazy. So I think, again, all they had to do was just say, oh, okay, fine, you stop the payments, I'm going home. But now they picked a fight. This is how stupid some of these people. The fight is, oh, we're going to go to the courts and we're going to force you to pay us. Okay. Guess what? We're going to open an investigation. And by the way, when there's a criminal investigation, of course, everything's put on hold, right? This will be interesting stuff. So I don't give up yet. But I'll tell you, Amy Coney Barrett obviously was a mistake. Trump picked somebody who was not a real, principled, textual constitutionalist. And he did it again. This is part of the folly of Trump's first term. He picked a lot of people. He put a lot of people in positions that weren't very good. And I think he wanted to get a woman justice. He had it in his head, he was going to get a female justice. Who gives a rip? Like, Trump today wouldn't give a rip if it's a woman or not, right? But he wanted to do that. He got it in his head, or somebody told him he needed to do it, and he went along with it. And like a lot of Trump's bad decisions in his first term, they've come back to haunt him. So, so that's just telling you, that's the reality. By the way, one of the plaintiffs here in this case demanding to be paid is the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition and the Journalism Development Network. Okay, they're represented by a public citizen litigation group. So they, they're the ones behind this. But that's it. It's USAID money. It all goes back to these trillions of dollars that have been going out from our government being spent insanely. And the argument that the money's already been paid. I mean, if it's a fraudulent contract, contracts can be broken. contracts cannot be paid. There are reasons for that. They're just trying to get the money out the door. These people are so desperate to get this money and to run away with it. And that ought to be suspicious on its face, in my view. So there we go. I was hopeful when John Roberts put a administrative stay back on the 27th that maybe this was going to go differently. My guess is that Coney Barrett changed her mind. So there's going to be a hearing tomorrow. Preliminary injunction. We'll see how it goes. Excellent. Okay, friends. I got to take a break here at the bottom of the hour. Did you hear that a congressman died after the speech? A Democrat dropped dead. I'll tell you about this and other stuff when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, the only law firm to trust is Sam & Ash. 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Happy March the 5th. Sam Mirejovsky here, host of the What's Right show, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. On this day, in 1953, a Russian gentleman by the name of Joseph Stalin croaked. And a great day. My dad always would tell me stories about how when he was in Czechoslovakia back then, a communist socialist republic, of course, this was a major day of mourning. And if you showed any amount of glee over Joseph Stalin passing away, it was off to the gulag with you. So of course, they had to keep their delights to themselves, if you catch my drift. They had to keep it under wraps, is what I'm saying. No public displays of celebration. Anyway, just pointing that out. 1953. One of the worst human beings of the 20th century, dead. Okay. Speaking of dead people, politicians, congressman yesterday from Texas passed away. This is wild. I didn't know he was suffering from cancer, so this was not entirely unexpected. But he, let's see. He was it was a jaw cancer, terribly painful stuff. But he was in attendance. He was in the room. And he, well, and by the way, yeah, he's from the district. This is what's crazy about it. He replaced Sheila Jackson Lee. That's the why. Sylvester Turner, 70 years old, right? Congressman there in whatever congressional district. He won the election for the seat that was vacated by Sheila Jackson Lee when she passed away last year. So this particular congressional seat might be jinxed. Just saying. I'm just saying. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, it just seems kind of like an occupational hazard. All right. This story here, I have to, more than half of adults worldwide will be obese by 2050. Well, I mean, I think we already are here in the U.S., but apparently it's a problem going around the world. Well, this is what RFK Jr. is going to stop, right, Robbie? He's gonna put his foot down and fix this. So half of it. 2050. I mean, that it seems like it's, but 25 years from now, everybody's going to be a fatty. Look, it's the food. I mean, RFK Jr. is absolutely right about this. It is the food, and we need to here in the U.S. fix that. And if we fix it, I think maybe the rest of the world will as well. So speaking of the rest of the world, Trump just put out moments ago, he met today with the hostages. Some of the hostages were released in Israel. He met with them in the Oval Office. Very emotional meeting. And he put out a tweet. And I tell you, this thing is a real scorcher. Because, well, here, let me pull it up. I gotta read some of this here. Let me see here, Robbie. Do I have it? Hold on. This is from Truth Social. Shalom Hamas. This is Trump. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. That's Trump's opening line. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over, all caps, for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending, and here's the difference a president makes compared to Biden to Trump. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning for their leadership. Now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. And then he goes on to say also, you people of Gaza, if you do want a beautiful future, it awaits. But if you continue to hold hostages, you're dead meat. Here's a beautiful thing. At no point does Trump commit American troops, right? American military. He's not saying this is what we'll... He's just saying, look, I'm going to let Bibi Netanyahu go in there and eliminate you. And I'm going to give him everything he asks me for, and he's being unequivocal. This is a beautiful thing, right? I wonder how much sooner this circus could have ended. And I don't want to dismiss it as a circus because, of course, I'm calling Biden administration response to it the circus. And of course, the protests and everything here in this country, these radical Hamas sympathizers. But this tragedy in Israel, these hostages, the attack to begin with, but then the hostages being kept for as long as they have been. Wonder how much of this could have been averted if Biden had some cognitive abilities and a backbone and, been named Trump. So, if Trump had been president when this went down, maybe it would never have happened. But yeah, so I think this is this is promising. It is absolutely clear that Trump does not care if Israel goes in and turns Gaza into a parking lot. And because at every turn, Biden consistently told Israel, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm going to give you these weapons, but not those weapons. By the way, said the same thing to the Ukrainians, right? Said, I'm giving you these missiles, but you can only use them in this area. You can't hit targets across the border. Everything was always limited. Everything always had parameters. And that, I think, creates for very ineffective warfare. So I'm just pointing this out. I think, and incidentally, another interesting development, if we're going to talk about the Middle East, is that MBS, the de facto head of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, he has had a big interview about Islam. I don't know if you saw this, Robbie. Very fascinating. He basically sat down and says, it's time for Islam to end radicalism. Now, I've always been very upfront about my criticisms of Islam because it is in the form that it's practiced very radical. But Saudi Arabia wants to redefine it, and they're calling this Vision 2030. And he wants to limit the hadith to about just, I think, like just 100 sections, taking about 99% of it, which is a lot of the extremism, out and aligning it with modern governance. And so, he even mentions coexisting with other religions. I'm not holding my breath. I'm just saying that Islam needs a reformation. And if somebody like the head of Saudi Arabia is willing to put himself out there as the face of a reformation movement in Islam, that's a good thing. Because this is a violent ideology and it has an enormous body count. And anybody that denies this isn't paying attention. And the problem is, again, for the umpteenth time, taking these people with these kind of beliefs and spreading them around in the Western world will continue to cause and contribute to carnage. So, fixing this will be not a bad idea. By the way, the Arabs also got together and said that they are shooting down Trump's plan to take over Gaza. They're shooting this down. And by the way, a lot of leftists out there are celebrating this. See, they don't want anything to do with Trump. And guess what the next part of this conference came to? The Arab nations got together and they are unveiling a $53 billion plan to rebuild the Gaza Strip. So they had a summit in Cairo, and they decided under Egypt's leadership that the reconstruction plan includes clearing debris, rebuilding homes, establishing industrial zones and ports. The left is calling this a direct rejection of Trump's fantasy of depopulating Gaza. You know what I call this? I call this three-dimensional chess, right? This Trump literally psyched out the Arab world to pay for the repairs to Gaza. And that's it, right? It cost him nothing. It cost you and me nothing. This is our president. He goes out there, says something outlandish. Everybody freaks out, but it spurs them to action. So just this week alone, what do we have? We've got the Europeans wanting to actually build their militaries for the first time in a while. We have the Ukrainians suddenly want to do a mineral deal and make peace. And we have the Arabs, looking to actually come in and spend real money to rebuild Gaza, when just a month ago, if you'd asked these same people, they would have told you, no, Israel needs to pay for this. Trump even has the Canadians drinking their crappy booze. My gosh, this guy is something else. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. The What's Right show will be back in just a moment. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. So I am, I always want to step back from time to time and look at the big picture, right? Trump has been in office for only, 6 weeks? Give or take. Is it just me, or does it feel as though Trump has been in office longer? I'm asking. It's a serious question. Because I almost feel like he's been president for 6 months. They talk about the first 100 days of a presidency being critical, the first 100-day agenda. Trump entered the gig, started work as if he was on day 90 and needed to get things done. The urgency by Trump and his people, the pace that they are setting, is spectacular. The border, right? Immigration as a whole, putting in new ideas. Love it or hate it. The Trump gold visa, right? The gold card. It's an idea, right? Coming in with with Doge cleaning up, doing the unthinkable, right? Because for so much of my life, we would grouse about the national debt. Nothing would happen. You'd run up against, a moment in time where the government was running out of money, that the Democrats and everybody, including Republicans, would cry about, federal workers not getting paid. Boo hoo, boo hoo. Meanie, 10 meanie Republicans, 20 bad Republicans holding up, postal workers and whatnot, and everybody would fold. Flash forward to now, and we're sending federal workers packing, holding little boxes of their tchotchkes from their desk, walking out of these, buildings in tears. And that's the new norm. You have to give Trump credit for this, right? There's some perspective here that's important. We have a Department of Justice and an FBI that, as we speak, is going through and calling its ranks of some of the most odious law enforcement personnel in this country that we've ever seen. Some of the people that have been waging a holy war against half of this country for the past 4 years and beyond are getting their comeuppance. That's not insignificant either. We have the IRS getting downsized. We have new food rules coming. We have our foreign trade partners being put in their place. We have somebody looking out for American interests. We have a real chance at peace in Ukraine. We have a chance at peace in the Middle East again. You sum it all up, and what do I think of? I always think of, it's funny, a little pejorative maybe, but daddy's back, right? Trump's back. He's in charge. He's taking care of stuff. And so then the next question, we're talking about the speech, right? And we're talking about last night and the Democrats all sitting there, pouting. What is the real opposition, the political opposition in this country? Because if it's that troll-looking congresswoman or Al Green mixed with a sprinkling of Rachel Maddow, that's not a serious opposition. They don't have anything. I saw, a conversation with what was it, Jennings last night, talking to Axelrod, and it completely reduces him to a nothing burger. Axelrod wanted to leave the conversation because the smart people really have nothing to say. Even Rahm Emanuel, who was, one of Obama's chief enforcers, right, chief of staff in the Obama presidency, recently, went on a news show somewhere where I think Bill Maher and said, no, we can't. It's bathrooms, no. Trans, no. We're done. Democrats need to move on. But that's one guy, handful of Democrats, and the rest of them are doubled down on the crazy. And the crazy was rejected by voters. And now under the leadership of Donald Trump, after the speech, a majority of Americans, big majority of Americans, say this is the future that we want. This is the direction that we want to go in this country. This is where we want America to be. And the right track, wrong track numbers continue to improve week over week because people finally feel optimistic. And it's coming in the nick of time. It may not even come. It may not even have come in time to stop a mild recession. Such was the damage done by Biden and his profligate spending and the radicals that ran this government, while he napped. But we can get beyond it. I feel so optimistic about what this country now can achieve. I'm in awe of what can be done. And Trump continues to demonstrate this. And it's why I urge those of you who maybe disagree with me, just take a break. And maybe this is the right frame for this. Take whatever you think of Trump, whatever negative emotions that you have, beliefs about him that you have, set them aside and view logically where we are at. Should we close our border? Yes or no? Is it more humanitarian to see to it that people aren't being trafficked across an open border? Is it better that we save money and that we balance our budget? Do we recognize that big things have to be done, even if they hurt, in order to stave off a national bankruptcy? Isn't it important, if we can find peace in Ukraine, that it be achieved? I'm just giving you 3 issues. Think about those 3 issues. Take Elon Musk out of it, and take Trump out of it. Take whatever you have preconceived in your heads out, and just look at that. Because to me, it's not a political issue to close the border. It's not a political issue to try to downsize government and to reduce waste. And it's not a political issue to try to achieve peace if you can. This is, at the end of the day, about humanity. We don't have a country if we go bankrupt, Republican or Democrat. We can't help the poor if we can't help ourselves. We can't do any of the things that you might want to do if our country's going bust. And saving lives ought to be a bipartisan agenda. And that's the part of Trump's speech that I think really spoke to me when he said, look, and no matter what I do, these people over here won't be happy. He's right. But don't be one of those people. Even if you're a Democrat, don't be one of those Democrats. See this for the big picture that it is. It's good. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KX.